Hello my friends, if you like my work, please remember to click thumb up, subscribe to my channel or hit the notification bell to be informed about new videos. I'd just like to say thank you to all my patrons, please join them if you can, the link is in the description below. I've been waiting for this moment for quite a long time and finally it's time to start working on the new Tamiya model. Well, maybe not so new because it's already half a year old, but you know what I mean. Of course, on my channel you will find also Open the Box review, the link is at the top and in the description of this movie. In general, in this episode I will show you mainly what modifications I made to this model. A few additional parts, replacement with photo-etched standard accessories such as a metal barrel or towing cables. And probably one of the most important accessories, which are tarpaulins, blankets and similar things. The construction itself didn't cause any difficulties, the only uncertain moment was when mounting the canvas cover to the turret, and this is not only my observation but also others. It's a bit missing and you have to work with sandpaper to make it fit nicely. Besides, I almost completely skipped building the interior. I don't like the waste of time on this stage of modeling, besides my idea is to cover the fighting compartment with tarps, protected against rain and generally bad weather. Yes, I know, some people may be disappointed, but my laziness has won out. Of course, before that I collected some photos from the internet to see what I can improve or rebuild on the model. The straps for securing the equipment are missing, but this is not a big problem. Several elements can be replaced, but that's what I leave to individual preferences. I'm going to make the vehicle out of the direct combat lines, so the crew will be relaxed and the whole scene will be placed with some elements of rural surroundings. As you probably noticed on the thumbnail, the whole construction took me 3 days. Of course not 12 hours a day, but several hours, and you could probably do it in 2 days, but what's the hurry? After all, there must be some joy in this game, right? Okay, I started my accessories with small chains that I found in the remains of photo-etched parts from other models. And this is the effect. The jerrycans from Eureka XXL were glued together in one line. I mixed this set with one German can just to make it more interesting, and then I made a shelf for additional fuel tanks from pieces of plastic profiles. Overall, when I looked at the photos of this vehicle, the first thing that caught my eye was the lack of any stowage elements on the hull. Only on one I found anything on the back wall. Also, on my model not much is happening there, but you will be able to see something. For example, additional showers or one more towing cable. Okay, time for the turret. I cut all the bigger parts of it, as it's my habit to reduce the space that the sprues take up, and started to build this section. As I mentioned earlier, I omitted the interior elements, which significantly shortened the construction time. I love the Tamiya models for the perfect fit of the parts. This makes work easier and stress-free, and it happened in 99% of the models I had. This 1% is here. And this is the element that you need to be most careful about in this model. Mega accuracy is necessary here, of course on the other elements as well, but especially here. As I mentioned, it's problematic to fit this element to the walls of the turret. But that's not a big thing and it just takes a few more minutes than it should be. I don't show here the exact sanding and measuring, just when you build this model you should pay attention to this moment. Of course I replaced the main gun plastic part for a metal barrel from Master. It fits perfectly. And this is how the vehicle with the main elements looks like. The plastic tracks were left in the box because I already had 3D printed from Quick Tracks. You can check them out in the video I published some time ago. The link is at the top and of course in the description. I played with them a bit to put them on the wheels and the whole thing looks better immediately. Undoubtedly their advantage is that they are workable and easier to handle during construction, although they are a bit delicate due to their structure, and I'm sure that also during weathering it will be much more convenient to work with them than with trucks from the set. Of course the details are also much better. From Eureka XXL there are 3 stowage elements to the sides of the turret. While I usually make such sets by myself because I can freely compose their content and arrangement, here they look super realistic and nothing needs to be changed. It's enough to stick them to the model and they are ready. Their author is Paweł from Tanksformers. Good job! Somewhere in my collection I also found a set of American antennas and took out the antenna pole and mount for it. It looks great. It's a bit larger than the one in the model, but I focus more on its appearance than size. The antenna rod must be glued because the hole is too shallow to hold it without glue. Or drill a hole. I made the missing stripes out of a paper. This is the simplest solution when we have to bind some non-standard equipment arrangement. However, as we have an ordinary mount, you can use 3D printed or photo etched. In a situation like here, paper strips will work best, which can be additionally strengthened by covering them with CA glue, as they are already attached to the model. Although it would be easier to paint these elements before sticking to the model, I decided to fix them permanently because later I will put tarps on them, which will partially cover the resin stowage. In addition, I also prepared an extra container on the back wall of the turret. Easy peasy. More will be there in the moment. I used the towing cable set from Eureka XXL. There is only one towing cable in the box, so if you want to do as I do, you need 2 sets. Tamiya in the manual says the cable is 70 cm long, so cut it as they say. The resin ends need to be gently cleaned and sanded, but it's 5-minute job. I left the front loose because it will be easier for me to apply decals there or use a stencil to paint the white star. Now the longest part, which is working on tarps. I will show you here almost the entire process of their creation, of course at an accelerated pace, but anyone who wants to see how I do it will easily catch all the trinkets. As you will see in a moment, I used 2 different modeling materials to make the tarps. The first green one is green stuff and the black one is milliput. They differ in consistency and final texture after drying. They also differ during work because the green one is more flexible and the black one is more fragile and sticky, so I work with gloves on it. Thanks to this they can be used interchangeably, achieving different effects. I used a can of hairspray and baby powder to roll them out thinly. They may also be anything else that will prevent both masses from sticking to the roller and to the surface. It's better to sprinkle more than less because I will be cleaning them from the leftover sprinkles later anyway. It's also worth having a sharp knife ready, short and long. It will be useful for us when trimming. A soft brush and a little water are also necessary to shape the tarps well and prepare realistic folds. If I can propose something for consideration and help you at work if you want to try my method, the most important thing is to plan how the final result should look like. If we know it, the arrangement of tarps is a pure pleasure and, contrary to appearances, it doesn't take much time. First, the shape of the tarpaulin itself is less important. More important are straight edges. Whether it will be a square, rectangle or polygon, it's not so important because after the tarpaulin is folded and bent, this shape will be completely irrelevant. The second important thing is the thickness of the tarp. The thinner, the better, but you cannot exceed the point at which the green stuff or milliput will tear after each touch. If we make the material too thick, it will look like flattened chewing gum, which unfortunately is often seen on models presented in public. Third, there is no need to rush. Both materials harden after a few hours, so we can safely work on a satisfactory result. Fourth, you must always remember that the elements that we add to the model look as natural as possible. Equal stacking is the enemy of realism. To simplify it, I can say that the more bends and unevenness, the better. Finally, you can also make some details like leather straps, small holes, seam clasps or patches. All this will undoubtedly enrich the final effect, but always before we start adding such details, let's think about whether we are able to do it in 100% or whether something will be missing somewhere and this lack will be visible. It may seem a bit complicated, but if you make such a tarp and consider what I said, you will see how everything fits together. Good luck if I convinced you to try your hand. As I mentioned, paper strips are the best for tying stowage in non-standard arrangement, especially if we have handmade elements. Without rush supporting each arrangement with CA glue, you can arrange an interesting look. Once again, you have to remember about realism and always try to understand the crew member who would do such a binding on his vehicle. Of course, it can also be a wire or a string, but you also have to be careful here, because the thickness is important. Even the best made tarps can be spoiled by using a resized bond. I won't tell you that finish like this, that is strapping the entire stowage and possibly adding details, is fast. No, definitely not. And that's what you saw a moment ago, that is not a quick job, even though I picked up the pace. It's time consuming as hell. Checking various arrangement options, finding the right parts, fitting them takes time and it's often a task for long hours. But the effect is worth it. I'm sure of that because I tested it on my models and my experience tells me that I'm on the right way. Okay, time is money, so let's go to work. Of course, first disassemble the model into elements that will be easier to paint separately. In general, I always try to keep the wheels separate as well as the tracks. It's much easier to work on them and with painting and weathering. During construction the wheels were mounted on a blue tack, so now it needs to be removed. Mounting on toothpicks is very simple, you can stick or drill a hole. It should be invisible later. I glued nuts and bolts to the turret and the hull. As you can see, the one in the hull is really big, but I didn't have another one and this one will hold well. It's worth sanding the nuts before we glue them. And it's also worth spraying the activator to CA, which accelerates the drying of the glue. Okay, everything is ready to be cleaned. Just a little grinding to the metal barrel and we can start cleaning the parts with the model degreaser from Modeler's World. It's a sensational liquid that evaporates very quickly and thanks to it we get rid of all the dirt that arises during the construction process. Just wipe the surface with a brush and it's ready. It's slightly dull and touching it must be avoided. As you can see, all the materials accept the fluid without any problems. It's super fast as opposed to washing in water and soap. Here we start painting after 3 minutes and water must dry much longer. Metal elements have been coated with a metal primer, which will increase the adhesion of the proper primer and paint. And now we have a grey AK undercoat all over the model. I didn't show how to do it because I always take the model to the balcony or to the basement so as not to spray paint at home, it's obvious. And such a curiosity. You can see how long it takes to take one photo. Arrangement setting the camera for one picture to the article. And here we have the effect. Now we can start the painting. On the lowest surfaces and those that are the most shaded, I decided to spray black-green. Most of them will be obscured or dirty, so I'm not worried about these areas. As you can see, I mainly painted the underside of the hull and turret, as well as the inside of the idler and drive wheels. The basic color is olive drab. I paint from the top to cover mainly surfaces that haven't received a dark shade yet. I will lighten the base color in a moment because now the model is too dark. But before adding lighter tones, I will paint the wheels first. I wanted to use the proven color from Wheel Colors for this, but it turned out that I forgot to buy a new bottle of paint. There was nothing left and I needed to find something similar. I chose black 6RP. First I painted the rubber rims and it was walk in the park, the same like adding olive drab on the wheels. Just because I used quick wheel mask. Yes, I know that plastic ruler with rings is much cheaper, but you know, I don't think that there are enough rings cut for each model. You can use the ruler if you like, but I like the masks. As you can see, it's very convenient tool and we can paint all the rims with it. The basic color on the hull is already dry, so now I can easily start brightening. I will do this in several stages, increasing the amount of light paint in a mixture with olive drab. I apply color on the most exposed surfaces. Generally, as you can see, I don't play with any sophisticated patterns, I just brighten the surfaces. I lightened the color 3 times, adding more buff each time. The difference in shades is clearly visible on the engine plate because there is a shadow that will be under the turret. Of course, if you plan to set up a model with a turret rotated, you need to paint the shadows accordingly. I assume that my model will have a straight bar, so this shadow is justified. If the turret was positioned differently, I would paint such a fake shadow elsewhere. The airbrush goes to the side and now I can start brush painting. I painted all the details this way. I divided the work into 2 parts, first the hull and then the turret. I think I painted all the screws head silver. Of course, as before, it's about contrast and besides, many of them will be invisible at the end. You can do it now just like me, but also after all with a pencil in the places you choose. In the photos from the museum I noticed that the front hatches have some rubber gaskets or something similar and they are black or dark grey. It's not mapped in the model, but the edge can be painted in this way. Maybe I can try to make it from soldering wire. On the other hand, maybe it's a museum improvement. I don't know. The funnel is generally silver with a slightly darker shade. On the road wheels I painted some silver effects on the screws and on the edges. These are small scratches that most probably will disappear under the mud, but there is a chance that something will be visible, and that's what I want to achieve. As we are already at the chassis, the manufacturer of Quick Tracks has sent additional locking links that will definitely facilitate the assembly. 2 additional links connected with a wire which is then cut and glued. It works great. To paint both sections of trucks, I attached them to the mat with pins. A little pressure is enough to keep trucks in one place. First I washed them with model degreaser and then covered with AK truck primer. A few thin layers was enough to prepare them for weathering. Now I'm starting the second stage, in which I will take care of the elements of the turret. Generally it will be a long fun with tarpaulins painting. I won't tell you what I do on individual elements, I think you can see it very well. The most important thing I would like to convey is to try to paint them with different shades, which will undoubtedly be better than one color applied to the several similar elements. Of course it's best to keep them in a military style, unless we make some captured goods, then it's advisable to use more bright colors. This can also help build contrast and, perhaps equally important, tell a story. Even such a trivial thing as a colorful blanket builds the atmosphere, and you can imagine what the crew did to get this stuff. One note more. Start painting from the bottom and more specifically from the most hidden elements, and move on to those that are more and more visible. Even if you keep changing the color of the paint on the brush, it will still be easier and faster than the constant corrections of the element you just painted. Oh yeah, good luck! The machine gun was painted black with a few silver elements. Of course the ammunition belt is also colored accordingly. More will come later. The next stage, which is extremely important in the case of this vehicle, is marking. But before I get down to it, I covered all the surfaces with a glossy varnish. 2 thin layers were sufficient. From the set of decals that Tamiya adds to the model, I chose only some of the stickers. In fact, I was quite skeptical about them because they seemed very thick in my opinion. But Tamiya knows what it's doing, and I cut out the ones I needed for the model. I decided to compose my own version of the markings because I didn't care about any particular vehicle. Of course, white stars for all the places I want, plus a tank destroyer badge on the sides of the hull and a few small tactical markings. Besides, from my decals I also cut the numbers for the vehicle number and the smaller stars. I cut the side stars for the turret out of the circles. Cutting them to fit the equipment that is already there I considered a waste of time. It's enough that the stars on the engine plate and at the top of the turret will be properly formed. Initially I planned to use stencils because I really like all kinds of imperfections in the painting of the markings, especially the American ones. However, I found that their mounting would be too breakneck and therefore the whole thing will be made of decals. Maybe another time and on a different model that won't be so crowded with stowage. All the decals have also been soaked with microscale salt to better blend them into the paint surface. It was surprising to me how quickly the decals from Tamiya could be softened. I think I forgot how they work because I haven't made any model from Tamiya in a long time and I haven't used their decals. I was wondering if it was worth applying a camo netting, and whatever to make a separate video about it because I think I didn't know movies on YouTube that satisfied me with their content in this subject. Of course there were some nice ideas, but they didn't quite meet my expectations. Also, such a film about making masking nets will be made in the future. I already have a plan of how it should look like and what it should contain. But let's go back to Hellcat. I decided to add a net, and it will be a captured German net, the simplest one to make. Of course, you have to remember that there were many types of such camo even in one army, but here will be the minimum version. With ordinary bandage we can make a nice effect that will diversify our model, but it must be done with sensitivity. I had a piece of dried bandage, but it's very easy and it can be done at the same time as impregnating the material with glue. Just mix water, paint and some PVA glue and soak the material in it. Then we take it out on a piece of paper towel or squeeze and unfold it. When it dries a little but is still flexible, you can add the mesh on the model. I always use a brush and diluted glue for this and set the arrangement on the shape of the vehicle. In the case of Hellcat, I will additionally form places near the hatches because the crew will be landing on the edges and it will be good if the mesh will stick to their shoulders. Now I can take care of the proper weathering, so the wash is first. I chose black-brown from Modeler's World and the thinner from the same company. Once again, I am convinced that it's great product and that it is just perfect. Yeah. It spreads very well, it's thin, so it doesn't change the color of the paint it's applied to, and what is important, it smells good. By the way, today I will be working almost all the time on these company products. The most of my work on the turret was to process all the stowage and tarps. Telling the truth, I did the wash 2 times to have no doubt that all the details are properly emphasized as I wanted. I spent some time cleaning the excess, but it also gave me the opportunity to obtain additional effects on some elements that I can describe as utility dirt. I put the turret aside for a moment and went back to the camouflage net, which was already completely dry and ready for further work. And that was old-fashioned dry brushing. Yeah, exactly. The light paint which I was painting the wooden elements earlier was rubbed on the green mesh, and thus it was even more contrasted on the background of the dark color on the model. This was exactly what I wanted to get. Now I could do the wash on the hull. This work went much faster than the turret, probably due to the shape and amount of details. At the same time, the wash was also used here to make streaks and stains. I was quite generous applying the wash on the wheels. I didn't even care when a stain caused by the excess appeared in some places. The weathering paints and pigments are going to do the right job there in a minute. The next stage of work is a triple application of the weathering paints mentioned before. I started with the darkest color and airbrushed it on the most invisible places. It's a kind of color filter but with a higher intensity than an oil paint filter, but at the same time it has a much lower intensity than ordinary paint. The second color was a bit darker, but I would rather classify it as a thick dark color. This one was placed on more visible surfaces. In the meantime, I decided that it's worth covering the model with a thin layer of matte varnish, which I did. This product is as good as wash and weathering paints, and I would recommend it to anyone. Well, now the brightest color, which is the most visible on the dark paint of Hellcat. I can say it's a typical dust. In addition to airbrush application, I also did a bit of standard work with a regular brush. You can see it on the wheels mostly. It will be a very good base for pigments that will appear on the model in a moment. The bottom of the model is a place that is very often treated as it wasn't there, and many modelers don't paint it or do weathering. I realize that it's actually the least visible place, but you can practice here and check the effects of various products. Because later we will cover our tests with proper weathering, for example mud and stains, which most often appear in this place on vehicles that visit a larger part of the exercise site than just a concrete driveway. Especially the war vehicles, which spend 99% of their lives in the mud. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting to play with pigments, which is also the biggest mess on the workbench. I fixed the pigments with the Abteilung fixer, which I still had some left in the bottle and I wanted to use it so it wouldn't go to waste. When you will make the dusting of the wheels, pay attention to the way I create marks on the rubber rims. You can apply the pigment with a brush and rub with your finger, but also roll it around the particles, and this will create a completely different effect. Of course, the idler wheels, which are all steel, were properly polished with a pencil. The road wheels are glued permanently and now I have to prepare the trucks. The entire sections were painted with weathering paints exactly the same as on the hull, from the darkest to the lightest, and then with the same mixture of pigments I stained them. Of course, for the pigments to stick to the surface I soaked them with a fixer, and after drying I started polishing with a soft pencil. After applying, I will polish the edges again, because during assembly some of the graphite will wear off the edges and it won't shine as it should. The application of quick tracks was very easy, and thanks to the connection links that the producer added, it didn't cause any problems. All the wheels were glued to the model, and now you can only see how cool the pigments and their different colors have done. I'm very happy with the effect. Note the light matte on the rear vehicles, which brightens these elements very much, and thanks to the contrast they are very visible. As I said before, an additional polishing on the installed tracks with the same pencil is indicated. On the wheels I added some metallic abrasions, those that I painted earlier but dyed under weathering paints and pigments. Now you just have to wipe it gently with a pencil and we have a metallic finish again. Speaking of the metallic finish, I remembered that I had to make some rust on the crowbar. Just a little bit for the eye's interest. Rust to wash in an amount of less than a small drop. If anyone wanted to know how much it is, it's very little. When it dried up, I put on weathering paint in dark rust color to finish the tool. Of course, again in a very small amount. The effect is great. On this model I used the pencil probably the most of all my models I have made so far. Well, it's very useful stuff. The towing cables got a bit of rusty wash, but it was really very delicate. And of course polish with a pencil. This is another super easy idea to make the right look on some elements. Okay, now we can start making dust. I don't know why my camera went stupid and I saw it after I uploaded the film to my computer. This cold shade is not a tragedy, but forgive me for this flaw. Applying the pigment directly to the model and on the matte surface is associated with a certain risk. Namely, removing it will always leave a trace, less or more. Therefore, it's necessary to do it with caution and determine in advance where it should appear. As you can see, I used a regular application brush and a white and very soft brush for blending and drawing the excess of the model. The effects are clearly visible and you can decide if you like it and use on your models or skip it definitely. Guys, if you are here, it means that you are watching all these videos, so if you would like to check your luck, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, like this video and write a comment coldemonspl. For the lucky winner I've got a set of tracks, metal gun barrel, resin stowage and towing cables exactly the same I used in this model. The results will be announced on Monday. And many thanks for my wonderful patrons, please join them if you can, to make my day and to be informed and entertained with the extra content I publish there. Don't waste your time and use 7 days free trial. The bottom is completely dry, so I can do some scratches. A toothpick is good enough. Oil stains are really easy to paint. You just have to consider their size and placement. On dusty surfaces they will do a good job of adding an interesting look. Of course, all kinds of stains are recommended. The same method of application can be used when dirty water is added. We can splash water and make any stains that usually appear on dusty surfaces. Sometimes it's worth looking at pictures of real vehicles where you can see various stains on horizontal and vertical surfaces. And with these effects, that is the easiest way to make them. In this vehicle the exhausts are on the top. You cannot forget about them because it's another place that after proper treatment will bring something interesting to our model. Now a bit of old school dry brushing. In this way I brightened all the tarps using light grey-green paint. Of course it would be better to use special dry brushing brushes for this task, but I don't have such brushes, so I have to work with what I have. But even so, the effect is okay. Dusting the turret elements is the same as on the hull. It's worth doing so that both these basic elements of the model work together. One of the last items to do was a machine gun which had the metallic pencil abrasions and some pigment dust, which may surprise some of you. Contrary to appearances, this element is dust in the same way as others, and it's enough to look at the pictures of modern vehicles in service, where this effect is very clearly visible. Of course you shouldn't overdo it, but keep in mind that it will be an interesting touch. When we have the browning, some shells will also be useful. Fortunately, Master Model produced such a set. I forgot to show it in the Open the Box, you have the link at the top, but now I'm catching up. The package contains 25 metal pieces, which are a mega addition. I know that they aren't cheap, but nobody said that this hobby is cheap. Never mind. I always say that you have to paint all these elements on the model, but this one is the one I don't paint. I do the wash only. And on the model I stick it with a pigment cement. It doesn't leave stains, but even if it does appear, it can be covered with a little amount of pigment. Almost done with this kit. Just a little thing copied from a photo from the war and the model is ready. But wait a minute, something is missing. Yes, I know, there is no chain. I quickly put a piece on the front plate and finally the model is ready. Couple drops of glue will keep it on the place. Well, what do you think about it? Personally, I really like its silhouette. Next to the Panther, it's the coolest World War II shape. I know it sounds funny, but that's how I feel. In general, I think I was able to reflect the atmosphere of this vehicle, especially the Eureka XXL kits with the entire stowage were helpful. Everything else is of course an individual matter, but you admit that the vehicle looks used. Thanks for watching. If you like my channel, don't forget to subscribe, like and leave a comment. As I said before, you can also be my patron and have access to top secret content that only appears there. That's all for today. I see you all in the next video. Cheers!